Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Jack Hagel. State employees are supposed to reimburse the state if they take an official vehicle home. But several officials with the State Department of Adult Corrections don't. That's despite having long commutes. That's raised questions about compliance with policies governing the use of state vehicles. It's something WRAL state government reporter Travis Fain has been looking into, and he joins us now. Travis, welcome back.
Absolutely.
Travis, your reporting uncovered that corrections officials are using state-owned vehicles for long commutes. Tell us at a high level what you found.
So I looked at the top 20 senior leadership of the Department of Adult Corrections, and I found three, or at least three, who are going more than 100 miles round trip from Raleigh to Fayetteville, from Raleigh to Hope Mills, and then one that's Raleigh to Caswell County. And they're doing this routinely, so it's pretty clearly a commute back and forth to where they live. And they're doing it in big vehicles. Like two of these people are issued 2023 Chevy Tahoes, which is one of the biggest SUVs you can get. Another one is a 2017 Nissan Pathfinder. So when I saw that in the numbers, because I asked for a whole bunch of vehicle records, I thought, well, why would we be taking these big vehicles so far afield? And that's kind of where the story began.
What's the state policy say about commuting in a state-owned vehicle?
So the policy it seemed when I started this to be pretty clear. It says if you are a state employee and you have approval to take your vehicle home to commute back and forth, then you are supposed to reimburse the state. And there's a couple of different ways you can do it, but it seemed to be blanket. But what the Department of Adult Corrections says is, well, these employees we're not making them do that, and they've given a handful of kind of explanations for that, but it seems to ultimately boil down to, we consider these to be emergency vehicles because these employees may have to respond to some sort of emergency at a prison that is closer to their home, because obviously we have prisons all over the state, that is closer to their home than it is to where they would otherwise park the vehicle at work.
Now, these three leaders that you report on, their positions are pretty high up. Are they the kinds of people who are actually responding to these kinds of emergencies?
Not in the moment. I mean, these are deputy secretaries. One is a chief deputy secretary. I mean, again, this is the top leadership answering to the secretary, the top secretary of the Department of Adult Corrections. So, I mean, this is upper management. I asked, well, how many times has there been an emergency this year that someone has had to respond to? And they said, well, it's happened once. And it was an escape in Hillsborough, and it sounds like the escape was handled within minutes. But the top official, wanted to come down and just kind of assess the scene and talk to local police officers who were investigating. So, emergency might be a bit of a strong word there, but the idea is that hey, sometimes it's more efficient to have their vehicle at their house or near their house.
Well, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll hear more about how WRAL came to learn about these commutes. Stick around. Welcome back to the WRAL Daily Download. We're talking with WRAL state government reporter Travis Fain about how state corrections officials are using state vehicles. Travis, I'm curious what got you interested in this topic in the first place, specifically the Department of Corrections.
Well, I don't know if people will remember this or not, but the state auditor, Beth Wood, was in an accident with her state vehicle around Christmas time of last year. And it came out, I guess, a month or two later. And so we had all these questions about what she was doing with her state vehicle. And I said, all right, well, let's broaden this a little bit. And the first thing I did was ask the Department of Administration, which, among other things, at the state government oversees the motor vehicle fleet. All right, give me a list of every vehicle and who it's assigned to. And when it came back, it didn't have any Department of Adult Corrections vehicles on it. And that's because the Department of Adult Corrections is a new department. It split off at the beginning of this year from the Department of Public Safety and basically was elevated. So now prisons, which is what the Department of Adult Corrections is its own thing. And so they had not transferred at all. And I said, well, that's interesting. They got 4,000 vehicles and you can't give me a list of them. So then I started looking at it, but I also shrunk it. I said, I don't know that I really care what some random person at a prison on the other side of the state might be doing with a state vehicle, but I do care what the senior leadership is doing. So I shrunk it down to those 20 people. And gosh, that sounds long-winded, but boy, that's journalism is you just kind of start sifting things and see what you can find.
Well, walk us through the process. What did you get and what did it show?
At first, it was just a kind of a list of names and vehicles. Then I said, okay, give me mileage logs. And they gave me at first some handwritten mileage logs. And then they had transferred to like an electronic thing. So I'm literally getting like transponder information that says it was at this address for this many hours. Then it drove this many miles. And so you start looking for patterns. And they also redacted home addresses because they didn't want anybody to know where, I mean, these are prison officials, right? Somebody might have a beef with them, but that made it real easy to figure out when they were driving to and from their homes because all I had to do was look for a big red redacted. And then so I'm looking at how often they're doing that and I'm comparing it to the commuter policy and I'm saying, hey, are they reimbursing? And the answer was no.
Now, these reimbursements would probably just represent a drop in the bucket in the state's budget, which is $30 billion. Why should anybody care?
They certainly don't have to. I mean, it's nothing new for executives, private sector, public sector, to get vehicles and use them in this way. What kind of got me was, all right, this person, you're saying this person needs to commute. You need them to be ready to go at the drop of a hat. Did you have to give them a 2023 Chevy Tahoe? You ain't got like a Prius or something that gets a little bit better gas mileage? If plan A is to have them driving back and forth from one was Caswell County to Raleigh, why is plan A also, and let's give you a massive gas-guzzling vehicle when this very administration, Governor Roy Cooper's administration, has made climate change a high priority, has made cutting emissions specifically from vehicles a high priority. So, you kind of got to put your actions kind of need to meet your words there.
Now, one could make the argument, Travis, that access to these vehicles is important, especially because the department staff is stretched and because of the nature of their work. What do critics have to say?
So I guess we'll kind of find out how much people want to say about this now that the story is published. It published Sunday. People can read it and they can reach out to me or to the department. I did speak to the head of a House Oversight Committee. The state legislature has some oversight. And I mean, it was kind of like a raised eyebrow, like, we might, that's interesting. I want to know more, as opposed to like a more boisterous criticism. I don't want to mischaracterize that. It was just more like, I got some questions about that. There is a big vacancy rate at the Department of Adult Corrections, which is the prison system, right? But most of that, it's like 30% department-wide. Most of that is correctional officers. It's very hard to hire and keep them. Nurses in prison hospital type facilities, that's really hard to hire and recruit. And I think a lot of people, or at least I have some indication that some of these rank and file employees look at this perk, for lack of a better word, that upper management gets and says, man, I'm busting it day in, day out. And she's driving a Tahoe home. And so there's a morale issue here. But again, I don't want to overemphasize what it is. I mean, we just kind of put the information out there and let people decide if they think it's appropriate or not.
You spoke with a representative of state employees. What did they have to say?
Yes, Scenic is the State Employees Association. We don't have a union, but that's kind of what it is. And she basically said, we're not against this or stuff like it, but what we want to see is your rank and file employees. If you're being creative and finding a way to get this for senior management, well, be creative and find a way to make the rank and file employees happy too.
Well, whether they need the vehicles or not, the optics aren't great to some people, as you just described. Is the department changing anything? So
they're going through a review of vehicle use policy now. I'm told that's not because we did a story. It's because they are this new standalone department, and that's a normal thing you would do is you reevaluate things. They're also talking to the Department of Administration. I kind of went back and forth with the two departments about, well, hey, the policy says this, and yet you're doing this. How come? And I did not feel they squared that circle. It kind of got waved away with, well, we're having some conversations about the appropriate use here. We feel like we're doing it right, but we're having some conversations. Conversations is a word that paints over a good bit. Well, we know you'll be watching. Thanks, Travis. Thanks for having me. That's WRAL State Government reporter Travis Fain. For his in-depth reporting on the Department of Corrections, visit nccapital.com. I'm Jack Hagel. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for listening to the WRAL Daily Download and for making us part of your morning routine. Another great way to get WRAL news is the Morning Briefing newsletter. It's a daily email with Triangle news, events, and headlines to help you get ready for the day. Sign up at WRAL.com/newsletter.